She smiled at me across the coffee shop, and I knew instantly, not because of what she wore or how she looked, but because of something far more subtle, something most men completely miss. By the end of this video, you'll never look at women the same way again, and honestly, that might be exactly what you need. Listen, I'm not here to judge anyone's choices. What people do in their private lives is their business. But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to talk about. There are patterns. Observable, consistent patterns in behavior that reveal someone's romantic history, whether they want to advertise it or not. A study from the Archives of Sexual Behavior found that certain behavioral traits correlate strongly with higher partner counts. Not stereotypes, not assumptions, actual researched patterns. And here's what makes this information valuable. It's not about shaming anyone. It's about awareness, about understanding what you're potentially walking into before you get emotionally invested. Because let me tell you something, ignoring red flags because they make you uncomfortable, that's not kindness. That's just being naive. So I'm going to share 7 signs that relationship psychologists and behavioral experts have identified. Some will surprise you. Some will make you uncomfortable. And one of them, it completely flipped everything I thought I knew about dating. She's overly comfortable with physical touch. Too quickly now, before you jump to conclusions, I'm not talking about a friendly hug or casual touch on the arm. I'm talking about something different. This is how it usually shows up. You're on a first date, maybe you've known each other for all of 2 hours, and she's already leaning into you, playing with your hair, sitting practically in your lap, or finding reasons to touch you constantly. There's a complete absence of that natural hesitation most people have when they're just getting to know someone. Here's why this matters. Physical boundaries develop through experience. Someone who's reserved with touch around new people hasn't necessarily had fewer partners. They might just value physical intimacy differently, but someone who treats touch as completely casual, almost transactional from the very first interaction, that speaks to a specific relationship with physical affection. A fascinating study from the Journal of Sex Research found that individuals with higher partner counts showed significantly lower levels of what they called touch selectivity. Basically, physical contact held less special significance because it had become routine rather than intimate. This was shocking when I first learned it, but it makes perfect sense. Think about your favorite meal. If you ate it every single day, multiple times a day, for years, would it still feel special when you sat down to eat it? Probably not. The same principle applies to physical touch. Now here's the tricky part. Our culture has spent the last decade telling us that being sex positive means treating physical intimacy as no big deal. And sure, people can do whatever they want, but there's a difference between being comfortable with sexuality and being so desensitized to physical boundaries that they barely exist anymore. I'm not saying someone who's touchy on a first date has definitely been with hundreds of people. What I'm saying is, pay attention to how she treats physical boundaries. Does she seem to have them at all? Or does she approach touch with you the same way she'd approach a handshake with a business colleague? Completely routine and devoid of special meaning? Because here's what most guys don't realize. When physical touch loses its significance, emotional connection often follows the same path. She has an encyclopedic knowledge of male behavior patterns. This one is absolutely fascinating, and most men completely overlook it. You're having a conversation, maybe about relationships, maybe about dating, and suddenly she drops these incredibly specific insights about how men think, how they operate, what they're really after. She can predict male behavior with scary accuracy. She knows all the games, all the tactics, all the manipulation strategies guys use. On the surface, this might seem impressive. Wow, she really gets men. But hold on, let me explain how this actually works. There's only one way to develop this level of expertise: extensive field research. You don't learn to read men like open books from watching romantic comedies or reading relationship articles. You learn it from dating a lot of different men, experiencing a wide variety of personalities, and recognizing the patterns that emerge. A researcher named Dr. Helen Fisher, who studies romantic relationships, points out that pattern recognition in human behavior requires substantial data collection. In other words, you need repeated exposure to similar situations to identify what's pattern and what's individual variation. This is how it shows up in conversation. She'll say things like, "Oh, I know exactly what he's doing. He's using the scarcity principle to make you jealous." Or, That's classic alpha posturing. He feels threatened by you. Or he's mirroring your energy to build rapport. These aren't casual observations. This is advanced level understanding that only comes from experiencing these behaviors firsthand multiple times. And here's the kicker. She doesn't just understand these patterns, she's often completely jaded by them. There's a weariness in how she discusses male behavior, like she's seen it all before, and nothing surprises her anymore. The magic and mystery of getting to know someone new? Gone, replaced by a cynical checklist of predictable behaviors. I remember talking to a friend who pointed this out in someone he was dating. He said, "It was like she'd already categorized me before I even opened my mouth. Everything I did, she had an explanation for. It wasn't flattering. It was like being a lab specimen she'd already dissected 100 times before." Now, does having insight into male psychology automatically mean someone's been with tons of guys? No, but when that knowledge comes with exhaustion, cynicism, and the complete absence of curiosity about what makes you different, that's telling you something important. She treats intimacy like a performance rather than connection. This one is subtle, but once you recognize it, you can't unsee it. Here's what I mean. Everything about intimate moments feels choreographed. She knows all the right moves, the perfect angles, the exact sounds to make. It's impressive, sure, but it also feels rehearsed, like she's following a script she's performed 100 times before. Dr. Jana Vrangelova, a sex researcher at New York University, conducted studies showing that individuals with more sexual partners often develop what she calls performance sexuality, where the focus shifts from genuine connection and mutual exploration to executing well-practiced routines. This is how you spot the difference. Authentic intimacy has awkwardness. There are moments of figuring each other out, asking questions, laughing at mishaps, adjusting, communicating. It's two people creating something unique together. Performance intimacy is different. It's smooth, polished, and strangely impersonal. She might be technically skilled, but there's an emotional distance. It's like she's simultaneously there with you and completely checked out, going through motions that have worked before with other people. And here's what makes this really interesting. Guys often mistake this for passion or experience in a positive way. Wow, she really knows what she's doing. But what you're actually experiencing is someone who's disconnected physical intimacy from emotional vulnerability. A relationship therapist I spoke with explained it this way. When intimacy becomes routine rather than relational, people develop a set of moves that generate the desired response with minimal emotional investment. It's efficiency, not connection. This shows up in other ways too. She might be strangely unemotional afterward. No cuddling, no pillow talk, no desire to stay connected. It's almost transactional, like once the performance is over, so is her interest in maintaining the intimate atmosphere. One guy described it to me like this. It felt like she turned on for the main event and then immediately switched off afterward, like a light switch. 1 minute, we're supposedly sharing this intimate moment. The next minute, she's scrolling her phone like I'm not even there. The truth is, when you've been intimate with dozens or hundreds of people, it stops being about the person you're with and becomes about the act itself. And that fundamental shift, it's almost impossible to hide if you know what to look for. She has zero jealousy, and I mean zero. Now I know what you're thinking. Wait, isn't jealousy bad? Isn't a lack of jealousy actually healthy? In theory, sure. But let me explain why complete absence of jealousy can actually be a massive red flag. Healthy relationships include a small amount of protective instinct, not controlling behavior, not possessiveness, but a sense that your partner values the relationship enough to care if it's threatened. When someone has absolutely no reaction to potential threats to the relationship, it often means they're not particularly invested in its exclusivity. This is what it looks like. Another woman is openly flirting with you right in front of her and she doesn't even blink. You mention an ex reaching out and she's completely unbothered. You go to a party without her and come home late, and there's zero curiosity about where you were or who you were with. At first, this might feel liberating. Finally, someone who's not insecure. But here's what's really happening. She's not jealous because she's not emotionally invested enough to be threatened. And often, that lack of investment comes from having emotional barriers developed through numerous previous relationships. Research from the journal Personal Relationships found that individuals with higher partner counts showed significantly lower levels of relationship anxiety and jealousy, not because they were more secure, but because they were less attached. They'd learned to maintain emotional distance as a protection mechanism. This was shocking to me when I first understood it. We assume lack of jealousy equals confidence and security. Sometimes it does. But sometimes it means the person has learned not to get too attached because they've had so many relationships end that they're always keeping one foot out the door. A friend of mine dated someone like this. He said, "I literally told her another woman had kissed me at a bar, thinking she'd be upset and we'd talk through it. She just shrugged and said, okay, no questions, no hurt feelings, no conversation about boundaries. It was like I told her I'd tried a new coffee flavor." That's not enlightened relationship maturity. That's emotional detachment. And here's the thing. Some level of care about the exclusivity and security of your relationship is normal and healthy. When that's completely absent, you have to ask yourself, is she really that secure, or has she just learned not to care too much because people are interchangeable to her? Her friend group operates with very fluid relationship boundaries. You can tell a lot about someone by the company they keep. And this sign, it's one of the most reliable indicators, even though nobody talks about it. Pay attention to her social circle. Are her friends constantly rotating through casual relationships? Do they talk openly about hookups and situationships like they're discussing lunch options? Is there a culture within the group where commitment is mocked or treated as boring? There's a concept in psychology called social norming. Basically, people's behaviors tend to align with the behaviors normalized within their peer group. If her entire friend circle treats casual sex as standard recreation, chances are extremely high that she does too. This is how it shows up. You meet her friends, and the conversation immediately goes to dating apps, recent hookups, or rating guys they've met. There's a competitive element sometimes, almost like they're keeping score. Commitment is treated as something that happens to other people, or worse, as something to be avoided. A sociologist named Dr. Lisa Wade wrote extensively about hookup culture and found that friend groups create powerful norms around sexual behavior. Individuals within these groups face significant pressure to conform to group standards, even if those standards don't align with their personal values. The most telling part? How her friends react to the idea of her being in a serious relationship with you. If they seem surprised, skeptical, or even dismissive, like you're an anomaly in her normal pattern, that's information you should pay attention to. I talked to someone who experienced this firsthand. He said, her friends literally asked me, "How did you get her to settle down?" Like I'd accomplished some impossible feat. That's when I realized her pattern of non-commitment was so established that even the people closest to her couldn't imagine her being seriously involved with someone. Now, can someone have wild friends but different personal values? Absolutely, but it's rare. Most people naturally gravitate toward friend groups that reflect and reinforce their own beliefs and behaviors. If her entire social circle operates with extremely casual relationship boundaries, the odds that she's an exception to that pattern are pretty slim. She has difficulty maintaining interest after the chase ends. This one is particularly painful for guys who've experienced it because it feels so personal when it's actually completely predictable. Here's the pattern. The beginning is incredible. She's engaged, interested, responsive, affectionate. You think you've met someone amazing. Then, once you're actually together, once the relationship is established and secure, her interest drops off a cliff. This isn't about the normal settling that happens in all relationships as initial excitement becomes comfortable partnership. This is a dramatic shift where she seems almost bored now that you're available and committed. Relationship researchers have identified this as novelty-seeking behavior, which becomes more pronounced in individuals who've had numerous partners. The thrill isn't in the relationship itself, it's in the conquest, the newness, the uncertainty. Once that's gone, so is their interest. A study published in the journal Evolutionary Psychology found that individuals with higher sociosexuality scores, meaning those more open to casual sex and multiple partners, showed significantly higher needs for relationship novelty and struggled more with long-term satisfaction. This is what it looks like in real life. She was texting you constantly during the pursuit phase. Now you're lucky to get a response within hours. She planned creative dates and made effort when you were still in the getting to know you stage. Now she barely wants to hang out. She was physically affectionate and couldn't keep her hands off you. Now she's distant unless she initiates. The painful truth is, you didn't change. The situation did. And for someone who's used to the dopamine hit of new partners and new experiences, the stability of an actual relationship feels boring by comparison. A guy I know described it perfectly. It was like I went from being the most interesting person in the world to being as exciting as watching paint dry. And all that changed was that I actually committed to her. The thing she said she wanted was apparently the thing that killed her interest. This behavior pattern develops from years of cycling through partners without building the skills for long-term relationship maintenance. The exciting part is always the beginning, so they never stay long enough to develop appreciation for depth, history, and partnership. If she seems allergic to relationship stability and only comes alive during uncertainty or conflict, that's not passion. That's addiction to novelty, and it's a pattern reinforced by numerous short-term encounters. She has extremely transactional views about relationships. This final sign might be the most revealing of all, and it's definitely the one that makes me the most uncomfortable to discuss, but it's too important to ignore. Listen for how she talks about relationships. Does everything sound like an exchange? Does she explicitly or implicitly treat dating like a marketplace where people offer value and receive benefits in return? Here's what I mean by transactional language. Men who make X amount should date women who look like Y. Or, if he's not paying for everything, he's not serious. Or, women need to leverage their attractiveness while they're young. Or, dating is about maximizing what you can get. Now, there's some truth to the fact that attraction involves value exchange. We're naturally drawn to people who offer qualities we desire, but there's a massive difference between acknowledging that reality and reducing all human connection to a calculated transaction. This transactional mindset develops from treating relationships as temporary arrangements where you extract maximum value before moving on. It's the opposite of building something meaningful with another person. Dr. Eli Finkel, a relationship researcher at Northwestern University, distinguishes between exchange relationships, transactional tit-for-tat, and communal relationships, focused on meeting partners' needs without keeping score. His research shows that people with extensive casual dating histories struggle significantly more with transitioning to communal relationship models. This is how you spot it. She keeps score. She talks about what men should provide in exchange for her time or affection. She views dating as strategy rather than connection. She discusses relationships in terms of leverage, value, and what she can get. One of the most telling conversations I ever witnessed was a woman explaining to her friends that she dates differently based on what she can extract from each guy, some for dinners and experiences, some for validation and attention, some for physical satisfaction. Each person was reduced to their utility value. That's not relationship building, that's using people. And here's what makes this particularly sad. This mindset protects people from vulnerability. If you treat relationships as transactions, you never have to risk genuine emotional investment. It's a defense mechanism that develops from being hurt, from having numerous relationships fail, or from never learning what actual intimacy requires. When someone views relationships through a purely transactional lens, it reveals they've stopped believing in, or perhaps never experienced, genuine partnership where two people invest in each other's well-being without constantly calculating who owes what to whom. So there you have it. 7 signs that behaviorally indicate someone's relationship history includes numerous partners. But before we end this, I want to address something important. This information isn't about judgment. It's about awareness. Everyone has a past. Everyone makes choices. The question isn't whether someone's past is perfect. It's whether their current behavioral patterns align with what you're looking for in a relationship. Some people with extensive dating histories work through their patterns, develop self-awareness, and genuinely change their approach to relationships. Others don't. These signs help you identify which category you're dealing with. And here's what I really want you to understand. Ignoring behavioral red flags because you're afraid of seeming judgmental doesn't make you a good person. It just makes you someone who's setting themselves up for disappointment. You deserve to make informed decisions about who you invest your time and emotions in. Having standards isn't shallow, it's self-respect. Now, these signs focused on what to watch for. But what about building genuine attraction with someone who's actually relationship ready? Because spotting red flags is only half the equation. That's exactly why you need to watch what's appearing on your screen right now. What women actually find attractive in men. Here's why this matters. Most guys think they know what creates real attraction, but they're operating on completely outdated information. The video on your screen breaks down the actual psychological triggers that create lasting attraction with high-quality women, the kind who aren't cycling through dozens of partners because they actually value depth and connection. Everything we talked about today showed you what patterns to avoid. That video shows you what patterns to cultivate in yourself. It's the perfect next step. And honestly, if you found this information valuable, what's waiting for you there is going to completely shift how you approach dating. The end screen is live. That video is ready for you. And if you're serious about attracting quality partners instead of just avoiding problematic ones, you already know what to do next.